13% of Americans are non-adopters in this country. And what does that mean? They cannot afford to go online, they live in communities where broadband is not available, or they simply do not see the relevance for being connected. Yes, there are people today that do not see the relevance of being connected. And they live here in the US. These individuals are disproportionately people of color, less literate, rural residents, older Americans, less able, and foreign-born. And they are now starting to align with, and this is a lot of the work that I do, segments of our society that experience the double and triple jeopardies of being unemployed and underemployed. They live in communities affected by what my dear friend FCC Commissioner Jessica Rosenworcel calls, they're affected by the homework gap, where young people do not have access to digital resources to finish their homework and do other assignments. They live in the absence of technology that keeps them isolated, limited, without imagination about the possibilities of what this disruption has done to our society. No joke. I was recently in Garrett County, Maryland, which is about 2.5 hours away from DC, sort of the western part of Maryland. And I asked somebody about how can I get an Uber driver? You know, my big city self. And she said, honey, there are no Uber drivers here. What are they gonna do, drive 25 miles to the next town? They barely have cars. They can't afford them. To me, that was an aha moment that we are living in a place where there are digital deserts that exist. And there's a cost to digital inclusion. Going back to my poll, for those of you who have called an Uber for convenience, do you find yourself calling an Uber sometimes because you just don't have cash on you? You know your credit card is sort of attached to your Uber account? It's just convenient, and if you've ever been in a cab lately, it's cheaper to actually take an Uber. Imagine the portrait of the 13% of people who are not online, that are not only digitally disconnected, but they're underbanked. They may not have a smartphone. They may not have a credit or any kind of financial collateral to actually underwrite that ride. And place yourself in a situation of a single mother who has to get to a primary care physician, and the only way to get there is through 2 bus routes, which now cost her time or an expensive expensive taxi ride. I was talking to a woman yesterday who had to get her children from Lanham, Maryland to the University of Maryland to a STEM program, single mother. She was willing to pay $60 in a cab to ensure that her mother could actually transport her kids to this program simply because she wanted to do the right thing. And in my mind, I kept thinking, girl, you don't have Uber? What about Lyft? What about that pass on Uber? Again, that is our digital native right that we feel we have that does not translate to all of America. And that's a problem. That is a problem. That is a problem of the 21st century. How do we take the very technology that was designed to solve social problems and apply that to people and conditions that it's actually furthering those disparities? I don't know if you heard what I said, but we've got a problem on our hands, folks, that we've actually got to solve. And so when you live on the wrong side of the digital divide, you lose your right to choices. You still have human and civil liberty, but you lose your right to save money, time, spend time on the things that matter in your life that actually engage you productively. In this disrupted economy, there's a cost to this exclusion, and it costs more to be disconnected. And that's different from most of us that have heard the concept of digital divide. Raise your hand if you've heard the digital divide. Years ago, and I've been in this space for a really long time, the digital divide was more binary. Who has access, who doesn't? Who has a device, who doesn't? Who lives in a community where there's a library, who doesn't? Does this tech center have a computer lab? Which one doesn't? We are in so much more of a sophisticated world where our lives are interrelated and intercorrelated with all of these segments. There are things that we can't do as individuals. I don't know about you. When I lose my phone or the battery goes dead, I don't know what to do. I start panicking because I immediately start to think, oh, Lord, I can't check my email. How are people going to communicate with me? What am I going to do to make sure I look at that, book that meeting? And again, that is my own aggrandizement, I would just suggest, around what technology has done for me as a middle-class woman. Put yourself on the shoes of others across in Anacostia, in rural America, and you will understand that digital access is not ubiquitous the way that we think it is. And I'm going someplace with this because I think those of you that are sitting here today, you play a role in closing that digital divide.